Hello, and welcome to St. Lawrence's Church. We're delighted that you are visiting this beautiful building and hope that you'll find this guide helpful. The church was built just over 200 years ago. There had been two earlier churches on the site, but in the early 1800s, the medieval Early English church had fallen into poor condition. When it finally collapsed, this new Georgian Gothic church was built at a cost of £30,000 between 1814 and 1816. The architect was John Pinch of Bath, and the church was built of Bath stone brought along the nearby Kennet and Avon Canal, which opened in 1810. A major restoration took place in the 1880s. The church is some distance from the centre of the town. This is because the original 11th century village of Hungerford was in the area of the Croft. But in the 13th century, a planned new town was set out with the key streets as we see them today. We really hope you enjoy your visit to the church, and will highlight about 20 special items inside the church and 3 outside. The guide takes about 20 minutes. You can, of course, pause the audio and restart at any stage. Remember to keep looking at your screen because relevant photographs will be displayed throughout the guide. So let's go into the church and walk on as far as the centre font. This also is of Bath stone, beautifully carved, and it dates from the 15th century, having been transferred from the previous church. It is octagonal with panelled bowl and shaft. The bowl is carved on each face with a quatrefoil within a circle. Look east towards the altar. When Mr. Pinch designed the church, he used arcades of ironwork, but these had deteriorated by the 1880s, and in the restoration the whole arcade was altered to be of stone, an amazing piece of work carried out by the local firm of Wooldridges on the canal wharf. There are some splendid carved details: the foliated capitals, the decorative bosses, and the corbels that carry the main supports of the roof. These depict angels bearing shields with the badge of the town and the gridiron of St. Lawrence. Do admire the beautiful east window. We will study this more closely later, but for now leave the font and walk away from the porch to the stone effigy in the north aisle. Local tradition has it that the stone effigy was that of Sir Robert de Hungerford, who in 1325 founded the Chantry Chapel of the Holy Trinity in the south aisle of the early English church. Sir Robert had extensive estates across southern England, including Hopgrass in Hungerford, just on the other side of Freeman's Marsh from the church. He died childless in 1352. However, recent expert opinion suggests that the effigy dates from the slightly earlier time, probably 1300 to 1330, which was before Sir Robert had died, casting doubt on it being his effigy. The stone effigy is defaced and very weather-worn, making definitive identification even harder. On the wall behind the effigy is an inscribed stone tablet. This is the Indulgence tablet from the same Chantry of Holy Trinity, which Robert de Hungerford founded back in 1325. It is therefore about 700 years old and was restored in 2009. It is a very rare survivor and one of the most important treasures of the church. There's a translation of the inscription nearby. There are many wall memorials in church. They are quite a feature of the building. Many of them predate this church building of 1814, having been transferred from the earlier church. They were last cleaned and restored in 2007 to 8, and some are very fine. High on the left is a very large wall tablet for Sir Henry Hungerford, who died in 1673. It is the earliest memorial in the church today. The church has beautiful Victorian stained glass windows, mostly dating from 1880 to 1900. At the east end of the north aisle is a window which shows Jesus performing 3 miracles: healing the leper, curing the blind Bartimaeus, and curing a sick man of the palsy. This window was by Lavers and Westlake and dates from 1889. It was given by the parishioners in affection for their very popular vicar, the Reverend J.B. Anstice, during his failing years when he nearly lost his sight. Above the Lady Chapel altar, high on the wall, is a memorial to the Major family, who were doctors in Hungerford for 3 generations. The oldest of the 3 had previously served in the Royal Navy. Note the anchor. Just to the left of the pulpit is a memorial to Henry Cundall, who was unlucky enough to have been struck by lightning at his farm in South Africa in 1864. The pulpit, which is beautifully crafted of Caen stone with alabaster cornice and bosses of foliage, was presented in 1891 by the 2 Misses Lidderdale, who are thought to have run a girls' school in Hungerford, in memory of their parents and brother. It was designed by Mr. Stallwood of Reading and was made by the top quality firm of Earp and Hobbs of Lambeth. Stand near the chancel steps and look back towards the gallery to enjoy this view of the organ. It was built by Forster and Andrews of Hull in 1880, with the 3rd choir manual added in 1990 by Tony Foster-Waite. The east window is the biggest and most important window in the church. It was installed in 1895, and the glass is again by Lavers and Westlake. This window was also donated in grateful memory of the Reverend Anstice, Vicar of Hungerford for 28 years between 1866 and 1894. The scene reminds us that St. Peter was given the task to feed his sheep. In the background, can you see a partially obscured 2-masted, square-rigged sailing ship? If you look at the stonework just to the left of the top of the window, you may be able to make out the small carved face. This may be a green man added by the stonemasons to bring good fortune to the church. Many of the big stone floor memorials in St. Lawrence's are covered by carpet, but one is open for us all to see. At the east end of the south aisle is the memorial to John Sherwood and his family. John Sherwood was a doctor in Hungerford. As you walk towards the entrance doors, you will see a board on the wall listing all the vicars of Hungerford St. Lawrence. The first was Ralph in 1148, and the Reverend Mike Saunders is the 54th vicar. At the present time, the vestry is in the southwest corner of the church, and access is not normally possible. Currently hidden in the vestry is the original east window, installed when the church was built around 1815. It was moved here when the new east window was installed in 1895. The window has 3 main lights, with St. Lawrence, the patron saint of the church, in the centre, and decorated Alpha and Omega symbols in the side lights. So who was St. Lawrence? He was the Archdeacon of Rome in the middle of the 3rd century, when Christians were being persecuted. He was especially responsible for the treasures of the church in Rome. When he was asked to give up the treasures, he asked for 3 days' grace. In those 3 days he distributed the gold and silver in his care to the needy of the city, and on the 3rd day he collected together all the poorest Christians, including the ill, frail, and blind, and presented them to the prefect, saying, "Here are the treasures of the Church of Christ." This he was condemned to death on the gridiron on the 10th of August, 258. At the back of the church is a display desk showing a very rare Bible. This so-called Breeches Bible, in which Adam and Eve are said to have covered themselves with leaves made into breeches, dates from 1578. It was found and carefully restored in 1980. You have nearly reached the end of this audio guide. It would be a good time to pause a moment in this lovely, calming church. Perhaps you will feel able to give a small donation to help with the costs of running the church, currently over £1,500 a week. There is a contactless terminal available. But as you leave the church, do look out for a few more special heritage items in the churchyard. Turn right and walk along the path towards the canal as far as the first seat, and look up at the tower. Spot the date of the building, 1814 to 16. Return along the gravelled path alongside the old vicarage garden. Here, adjacent to the path, you'll find an interesting headstone to the memory of James Dean. He was a coachman on the busy London to Bath road, but was sadly killed in an unfortunate accident in 1827. I encourage you to leave the churchyard via the little 4-bar wooden stile. This device is an ancient design which could be simply made and easily repaired. Press down the crossbars, step over, and as you release them, they make a delightful rattle sound. Locally, we call it the tumble style. There are a few others around the country where they are sometimes called clapper gates. I really hope you've enjoyed this short tour of our lovely church. If you wish to find out more, please look at the Hungerford Virtual Museum website, where you'll find a wealth of information on the church and everything about Hungerford's amazing history.